In the early days, cannabis primarily tasted and smelled like it did due to the soil, climate, and genetics of the region of the world that it came from. In the United States, we primarily received flower from Mexico, but flowers from other Latin American countries certainly showed up as well. Rarely, but sometimes, we were able to delight over something especially exotic from Afghanistan or Thailand too. Over time, though, enough bag seed found its way into the hands of cannabis lovers who also had the mind and resources to grow them locally. Breeders all over the world began to cross and hybridize these cannabis chemovars to create unique plants that had their own taste, growing patterns, colors, and medicinal value. This breeding happened both indoors and outdoors, but due to prohibition, breeding was mostly done indoors in the United States. Breeders hybridized plants to tease out the most wonderful attributes. Sweet, sour, earthy, skunky, and fuel tastes all became more pronounced once breeders got involved. Breeders also selected for mold resistance, size, overall health, and so many other attributes that a particular grower thought might be valuable. This dedication to craft is why cannabis breeders are revered and why modern cannabis is so badass compared to the stuff we grew up on. If you enjoy hearing frank discussions that dive deep into cannabis health, business, and technique, I encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. Every week, you'll receive a new podcast episode delivered right to your inbox, along with commentary on a couple of the most important news items from the week and videos too. Don't rely on social media to let you know when a new episode is published. Sign up for the updates to make sure you don't miss an episode. You are listening to Shaping Fire, and I am your host, Shango Los. My guest today is Mean Gene. Mean Gene is a legendary cannabis breeder from Mendocino in the Emerald Triangle region of Northern California. He is owner of cannabis genetics company Freeborn Selections, but is most known for his epic collaborations with aficionado seeds like the Black Lime Reserve strain. Today we're going to talk about Mean Gene's breeding practices, naming conventions, and that epic Black Lime strain. Hey, welcome to the show, Mean Gene.
Hey. How's it going?
Good. I'm glad that you could make some time to be here. You know, when I was getting set for this show, the first thing I noticed is that, I actually thought that your primary association was with aficionado seeds, because everywhere I've gone, it's always like, Mean Gene from aficionado. But after I got the opportunity to start following your Instagram feed for a while, I realized that the imprint that you are primarily responsible for is actually your own Freeborn Selections. So would you kind of break it down for us, like how you work between aficionado versus Freeborn?
Basically, Leo from aficionado was somebody who actually was living right on the same road as me, and he won the Emerald Cup, and I said, well, these guys look like they have some good seeds. And so, I messaged them, I think on Facebook to say, hey, can I pick up some of your seeds? And I wound up meeting them, and, those guys saw what I had, and they were like, yeah, do you want to do some kind of a release through aficionado? Your stuff is really good. And so, we started collaborating on a little bit of stuff here and there, and we put out Black Lime Reserve and the In the Pines and the Versailles, and I gave them the Red Hindu Kush F3 that I had. And, I think that's about the only ones that we really put out. And that's, those are the ones that the people, like Black Lime Reserve was a big, huge hit. I knew it was going to be good because I really like Black Lime myself. Mm-hmm. And, so when we put that one out, that one got a lot of really good press. And then I think there was like 650 entries or something in the Emerald Cup in 2014, I think. And I took second place with that. And so people really know me from my work with aficionado more than anything else, because those are really the only seeds that I've publicly released, other than me and Braveheart from Oregon. We did a little giveaway that was Nubia, which is a CBD plant, crossed with the Harlessu from Ringo at Sohum Seeds. And so really Freeborn Selections, a lot of people are growing out the seeds and have grown out the seeds that I make for years. But if for anybody to really know me for having ever got any of my seeds at a club or anywhere else, those would have been aficionados. So that's really why people, if you ask, oh, Mean Gene, they're going to go, oh yeah, aficionado, Black Lime Reserve, In the Pines, and those ones that I did work on.
It's a lucky thing that you chose somebody good to work with when you won, right? Because, if you're going to be associated with somebody, Leo and aficionado is like, that's somebody great to be associated with, even if it was, just for a couple of runs.
Yeah, for sure. And, it was funny because they won in 2012, and then I came in 2013 and I took third, and then 2014 I took second, and then 2015, I guess, I took first place in the Emerald Cup. And it was funny because after a while people started to say, it's fixed. These guys win every time. There's no way that you can just win every time. And it was actually one of those things where it was actually a great feeling to have people say, oh, the contest is fixed, you win too much. So
it was about 7 or 8 episodes ago, we had your neighbor Alan Atkinson on the show, and he was telling us that you live on the same mountain, and he says yeah, man, he says I can throw a rock and hit all of these Cannabis Cup winners that live all around me. It's like there's some kind of magic on that mountain. What do you look for when you're looking for a location for breeding?
Well, there's a really interesting thing that happens, and there's the whole, people have finally started to kind of open their eyes lately to the whole question of terroir and basically location. And some people will say, oh, it doesn't matter because if you're growing in potting soil, then location doesn't even play. But what's interesting about this part of California is that if you go all the way over to the extreme coastal zone, your flowers will basically produce mostly leaf, and they'll produce a lot of resin and they'll produce a lot of terpenes, but they'll have very little density, and they'll be very lightweight, and your plants will grow really slow, and it's not good for production, but for smokability, stuff is really nice. So then when you come a couple miles back, and then you start to get into areas like Comchi, Branscombe, a little bit further inland than that would be maybe like Leggett, the west side of Garberville and Redway and areas like that. Even a little further west and closer to the coast would be like Honeydew. There's all these little areas, and every area has something different. And from looking at it over the years and being in different places, I've been able to find a correlation where you look at what is, when you get farther away from the coastal influence, what happens is your flowers, they have smaller features. Every part of the flower is smaller. The stems are thinner. The leaves are smaller. Everything is basically smaller. Even the trichomes even become shorter and more closely clustered. And so there's an interesting thing that happens where when you go to the coast, it gets larvae. When you go inland, it gets so hard that when you go to break it up, to like say roll a joint, it actually breaks down in almost a undesirable way, where the flowers themselves are so dense that when it breaks up, it almost turns into powder. And if you go over to the coast, then it breaks up into these big chunks where every piece is this big piece, And so I'm right at a place where I get the benefit of the coastal influence that causes it to grow really big, well-defined features, and I get the really big, tall, thick trichomes, but I still have the advantage of being far enough inland that my flowers still are dense and they look nice to people who are into that look of something that's actually got a nice, dense, round look to it.
Yeah, that bag appeal.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting because people will say, okay, well, it's just either it's a coincidence or it's a fix. Either it has nothing to do with anything scientific because it just is random, and there happens to be a lot of people in this area who have award-winning cannabis, or they say, oh, well, they just give it to somebody who they know from that area. But what people don't understand in a lot of cases is that the way that people like Tim from the Emerald Cup or the judges from the Emerald Cup, I met those guys because I knew Tim from years and years back, but we weren't in the same circle. We didn't hang out together. He might have known who I was a little bit. But the reality was that those people got to know me because they went, wow, you had some really good weed. And that's how I started to know those people. It wasn't the other way around. And that's how it happens when you run an event like that and then you meet people who have really outstanding stuff. You're going to go, oh, well, you're the one with they obviously have an interest in really good weed. They're having a contest, right?
Right.
So that's how it happens that there winds up being in this little area. In my opinion, people here have really been holding a lot of the best genetics for a long time. This particular town in this county is a place where a lot of really, really good stuff has come out of. And so you have the genetic advantage, you have the advantage of a lot of people who have experience. And then what I was saying about the climate is you have this one little area where you get the best of both worlds, where you have the coastal influence, but not enough to take away from the quality as far as, like, okay, well, it's got the look and it's got the smell. And, if you go ahead and you go over one mountain over to the east, you'll have a lot heavier flowers and you'll get a lot bigger yields. But when you go to break it down to roll up a joint, when they go to smoke it in a cup, it doesn't break down the way that like nice indoor will break down. It's almost like it's compressed because it grows so dense. It's ridiculous. And so, for me, if I'm looking for the ideal climate, I really like places like, just to the east of Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, the east side of Garberville, the east side of Redway, right here where it's in Mendocino, along these ridges here. There's these certain areas that really will produce the type of flower that makes it the most smokable. And that wouldn't matter, say, for something like concentrates, but for the actual, in a flower contest, there's a certain texture that just breaks up and it rolls up better. And so certain strains, if you have a strain that has less dense floral clusters and you grow that to the east of me, then it'll get dense enough to where, okay, well, maybe someone's sour diesel might be coming from the east, and that might do better than something that I have here, because when I grow it here, it's not really dense enough to win the points on the look in the contest,
Yeah.
So there's different things, and there's certain strains that do better in certain climates, just like with grapes. If you grow one type of grape, you're going to want one type of you want a certain temperature on the nights, and if the year's not as good, then it's not as good of a year for a certain type of wine, and certain areas, and then of course, then the soil goes into play. But most people use potting soil, and that's the big point everybody has. Well, it doesn't matter where you do it if you're using potting soil. And I'm like, no, climate's big. If you run an indoor room and you keep it slightly more humid, then you're going to have flowers that are going to be not so ridiculously dense. And if you run it a very, very arid environment, you're going to have stuff like if you grow purple Urkel, you look at it and you can't even tell where the features are. It's just this thing. You're like, I can't tell where anything is at all. It looks like somebody smashed it all together, ground it up and smashed it back together, because every little feature has grown to be so petite,
Yeah.
So,
let's take that one.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. Let's take that one more step further, right? So you're talking about breeding the superior flower for a cup and for, you and your friends to toke. So how does that play into the breeding, right? Because, you're choosing, your key males and females in this, kind of Olympic training environment that you're growing these flowers in, but then you're passing on this gear to people who are going to be growing it all over the country and indoor, and so what do you consider when you're growing it on your property, which is pretty much a perfect place to grow, when you're considering the gear that you're going to pass around to others, so that maybe it doesn't need to have such a perfect environment?
Well, that's another interesting thing too, is that as much as it's a great environment for something that will do well in a contest, it's also an area where things have to be really, really hardy, and they have to be really weather resistant. And like if a strain is prone to powdery mildew, it's going to show in this area, because we do start to get the fog at the end of September, where other places won't have it. And we do get, this is like considered like a temperate rainforest here, especially when there used to be more redwoods in the area. This area, this year, I think, this is just a rough estimate, but I think we got maybe 100 or 110 inches of rain here this year, and that started in the end of September last year. So anything that does well here, it's going to have a pretty good shot at doing well for people in most climates. Like if I have something and it really does great for me here, somebody in Oregon or Washington where the weather's even worse, it's still going to do better than a lot of stuff they might get, because of how the weather is, as opposed to if, say, I was an outdoor guy and I was in Southern California, or I was in Nevada, or if you were at a low, we're at a fairly high elevation here. We're fairly coastal. And so everything, as I go through, I really try to look at, okay, well, how would this do for somebody in a more extreme climate? And I try to really go for things that are hardy in all ways. And that's one of the things that's made me wind up with strains that are so high in terpenes, because terpenes are oily, and strains that produce a lot of oil tend to do a little bit better in, say, the rain or the fog, because it's almost like it's like water off a duck's back, Mm-hmm. The rain falls on them and it just comes off, so yeah, it's interesting because it's such a great climate for the finished product, and yet it is kind of a challenging climate as a farmer.
It's kind of like survival of the fittest, right? It's like, well, if it does well on your property, it's going to be thriving, and the terps are high because it's got a really strong immune system, and so then it's attractive to our human nose too. So the combination of the difficulty and also the your terroir means that the strains that you're breeding are probably going to be pretty good, pretty bulletproof just about anywhere, unless you change temperature, humidity in a big way.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's almost kind of like a magical thing, to look at it and go, okay, well, there's all these things that have come together to make to lead things down the path that they've gone down, because it's everything's been underground for a long time, so people don't necessarily know like Mendocino County. It's my people at this point. Maybe people still are saying, oh, Amsterdam, or these different places where people know about a lot of weed, or even like Humboldt. Humboldt has been known for a long time, and Mendocino and Humboldt, Trinity, Sonoma, Monterey County, there's really been a lot of really great strains that have come out over the years. Again and again, there's just all this stuff. And I feel like part of it comes from the people who live here, of course, have more experience and do more stuff. But I think also the climate of this area, like I said, if you have this stuff, if your weed is greasy, it does better in the weather. And the fact that we have a little bit of a more extreme climate, I think that, that in all of these areas that might be pushing that a little bit,
Yeah, right on. That makes sense. Hey, let's go ahead and take our first short break and be right back. You're listening to Shaping Fire, and my guest today is Mean Gene, master cannabis breeder at Freeborn Selections. We'll be right back. As cannabis normalization sweeps the country, knowledge of how to grow cannabis naturally and without synthetic inputs has become more and more available. In fact, probiotic growers are experiencing large yields and exceptional terpene profiles without using chemicals banned in their state. Move away from the risks inherent to chemical nutrients and instead invest in your soil. Use your soil again and again, reducing costs and improving the vitality of your soil with each cycle. Keep It Simple Organics has been a leader in aerated compost teas for years and now provide premium soils and nutrients to the cannabis industry. They offer a full line of all natural inputs for building your soil, feeding microbe communities, and brewing nutrient and compost teas. They can even help you test your soil to spot deficiencies that may be holding you back. Check out their website at kisorganics.com. Enter the word Shango into the form at checkout to receive 10% off your first order. Stop pouring bottled nutrients on your soil only to throw it out each cycle. Start building living soil that will serve you for years to come. Visit kisorganics.com and grow healthy, thriving cannabis. We humans are attracted to plants because they offer us relief and are a whole lot of fun. Sometimes, though, the best parts are buried inside the plant and we need to use specialty extraction technology. When it comes to cannabis, it is extraordinarily important to extract its precious oils without changing them in the process. We want to preserve the properties of the cannabinoids, terpenes, and other constituents that all work together. Since 1994, Eden Labs has been developing extraction technology and processes to do just that. Eden Labs was founded by a cannabis-loving engineer during the early days of medical marijuana in California, and the expanded Eden team has been designing and building industry-leading solutions for cannabis extraction ever since. Eden Labs' flagship product is the newly improved high-flow CO2 extractor. As other extraction companies enter the market, it is the high flow from Eden Labs that everyone chases and tries to compare themselves with. Not only that, but the improved automation software allows data to be collected, stored, and studied. Eden Labs can outfit your whole lab. Eden's Cold Finger ethanol extractor creates astonishing whole plant extracts working alone or in tandem with an initial stream distilling step to isolate monoterpenes before extracting the rest of the botanical constituents. Eden offers you many options, including vacuum distillation, column distilling, stirred reactor units, and accelerated solvent recovery. When you partner with Eden Labs, your lab team is enrolled into the Eden Labs training program to boost their understanding of Eden's best practices to ensure that your outputs are exactly what you require for your application, whether it be dab oil, oil for pen cartridges, or edibles. When you work with Eden, you're not just buying the tech, you are buying dedicated customer support to help you attain your business goals too. You can hear Eden's CEO, AC Braddock, talk about the company's values during Shaping Fire episode 19 that was all about CO2 extraction. So many of the new companies in the market just smell opportunity, slap an extractor together, and hire a marketing company. Eden Labs has been listening to feedback from extractors and consumers for about 25 years now. They care about both you and your consumer. Partner with Eden Labs to extract astonishing cannabis oils and terpenes that you will be proud of. Go to shapingfire.com/Eden to find out more. Welcome back. You are listening to Shaping Fire. I'm your host, Shango Los, and our guest this week is Mean Gene, master cannabis breeder at Freeborn Selections. So, Gene, before the break, we were talking about the importance of weather and terroir there on your very specific mountain where you grow. And, a lot of people take your seeds and they bring them indoors. So, it begs the question, do you have a part of your breeding process that comes indoors? I mean, do you do any sifting indoors, or are you doing all your sifting outdoors?
Well, I mean, in certain cases, it's nice to do certain work with clones that have been proven again and again indoors to be really stable, because then that way you know that you're at least getting part of your gene pool is coming from something that's tried and true indoors. I do a little bit of breeding indoors or in a like an indoor outdoor kind of environment, meaning that it's like a a winter greenhouse with supplemental lighting, which I honestly think is better for stress testing for indoors than an actual indoor scene, because it's a lot harder to keep the environment really dialed in.
Yeah, because it really swings.
Exactly. And you will get those lower temperatures and you will get some of the higher temperatures. And, it's a little bit harder to keep it like, if I was running an indoor, it's really easy to go, okay, I'm 76 degrees all the time, night and day. That's all it is. And that's cool. For me, because, indoor where I live has kind of gone out years and years ago. There's people who do it, but as soon as people were able to grow out in the open in the sun, and the prices started coming down for people, what started to happen is it became a lot more efficient for people to start running light depths and running greenhouses and running outdoor. And so, what I do basically is I try to breed stuff outdoor, because in my experience, if it does good indoor, it's going to do great outdoor. So like I said, if I'm starting with some of those genetics, different, OGs or Master Kush, Hindu Kush, different things that they do perform well indoor, and then I incorporate those into stuff that I have coming from outdoor. But a lot of the genetics that I had that were coming from outdoor were Afghani based, and so when you take them and you put them indoor, they do great. The stuff the stuff that has more of a problem going indoor is ironically the stuff that's coming from indoor, like the Chem Dog, the Sour Diesel, some of the OG. Girl Scout cookies, cherry pie. Those are the things that, even when you bring them into an outdoor breeding program, you go through them and you go, oh, some of these here, you stress them a little bit and they go intersex on you. So, what I do is I mainly breed outdoor, because if it looks really good outdoor, and it smokes really good outdoor, when somebody takes it indoor, if they do it the right way, indoor has potential to have a little bit more of what I always call like the perfume on it. Like if you grow outdoor OG, it's very earthy and robust and it's nice. It has a great smell. But good indoor OG has this added little spectrum of terpenes that seem to show up that are detectable. It looks a little prettier. It's a little shinier. It's a little, the resin tends to look a little bit more light colored. And so I try to find the stuff that when I breed it outdoor, it looks almost like it's indoor, and I won't say like, oh, this will pass for indoor, but it's in that ballpark, So, then what I do is I'll have people go ahead and grow them out indoor. And as far as I've seen so far, a population that you can grow really stressed outdoor or in a greenhouse and it stays stable and doesn't show any signs of intersex, when you take that and a good grower grows it indoor, it's going to do just as good as far as sexual stability indoor as it does outdoor. Everything that I have that is problematic indoor, it's problematic outdoor if it's stressed, if it's overwatered, if it's too hot in a greenhouse or whatever it is. So for me, for breeding, I do pretty well being able to do it all outside and then do a lot of testing inside.
Yeah, right on. That makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is over the winter, I'll play with some new seeds and strains that I've never used before, and see what they do indoors. But at the end of the day, for my own head, I really like the terpene profiles that come from full on sunshine. I mean, my LEDs are great, and you're right. There are all sorts of really nice attributes of growing indoors. And, it's kind of like training an Olympian, right? You're training for a very specific thing, and I can control everything, and I end up getting this good product. But I also like that little bit of a, that wild outdoor taste from the broader spectrum of the sunshine. So, whatever I find over the winter that I love the best, I'll take it outside and see it express itself that way. And, I think that's just a fun thing of being able to go indoor and outdoor, that you can see both expressions.
Yeah, I think so too. And I know what you mean about the outdoor. I mean, like personally for me, I only know a few people. I know a lot of growers, and there's only a few people whose indoor is something that I would want to smoke above outdoor. I mean, it's a lot of people say, okay, indoor is always better. And for me, I'm like, if I'm going to see 100 samples of indoor and 100 samples of outdoor, I'm probably going to like 5 of the outdoor and 2 of the indoor, because outdoor, everything just kind of thrives and it works. And indoor, a lot of times stuff is just really washed out, and you can tell that there's too much heat, and it just doesn't look like it's healthy. And that happens a lot, And then I notice outdoor, although indoor the resin might be more visible, a lot of times the outdoor, it's actually more of these thick, almost like sheets of resin where the trichomes are almost sticking together in like globs. And for me, like if I smoke indoor, I'm gonna be high for, maybe an hour. And if I smoke outdoor, and of course, it's genetics, or it's hugely dependent on genetics. Some stuff, no matter what, it's going to get you high for like 4 hours if it's got some crazy haze or something. But I really like the high from the outdoor. To me, it really just hits me and it stays, and I can really feel it. And it's not just like this little rush of stuff, so.
Yeah. And I also find that, I still consider myself a novice grower, and growing outdoors is just so much more forgiving. You can make simple mistakes indoor and end up with big problems, but outdoor, you've got pest predators naturally outdoors. You've got the sunshine to help you with some of the molds. So long as I don't have, extensive fog, I know I'm going to be in pretty good shape outdoors, whereas indoor, something can go bad fast.
Yeah, it seems like outdoor, the environment is forgiving enough that as long as you handle it and dry it correctly, as long as it's properly dried and handled, you're going to have something that's really nice. But when you're indoor, it's almost like the whole process of flowering is like a curing process. If your room, outside, your stuff can be budding and it gets up to 90 degrees and you're fine. But if you're growing indoor and your room is hitting 90 degrees all the time, it's like when your weed is finally done, it's just going to be it's just
so tired.
I don't know,
it's just tired.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing substantial anymore about the resin's profile.
It's like when I stay in the sun too long. I'm like, oh man, I need to go take a cold shower somewhere.
Yeah.
So every breeder has got those specific cannabis plant attributes that turn them on the most. And it's a regional thing, and it's also a breeder thing. What do you look for when choosing plants that excite you, that you want to work with further?
Well, for me, it's like experience leads me a lot. Like I can look at a plant and go, ooh, that's one of those plants that gets the big buds all the way inside of the plant. Or, ooh, that's one of those plants that doesn't need a lot of support. Or that's one of the ones that's shaped that certain way where I know it's just going to get tons of buds all over it. Or, the main thing for me as far as like what defines the quality of a strain is really what do you wind up with in your bag when it's all said and done. So for me, what I want is the ones that have that crazy, I'm really, for a lot of people, it's all about, well, is it stony? What's it do to you? What are the effects? And I can appreciate that. And I respect that. mindset a lot. But like, honestly, for us growing up here, like when we were smoking a lot, we would smoke so much that it wasn't a matter of, okay, well, we only have this 4 grams of weed. How high is it going to get us? So we really got into flavors and smells a lot. And I really like the flower, just for aesthetics, aside from actually consuming it or doing anything with it. I like to sit and I like to hold it. I like to smell it. I mean, the same way people like cut flowers, like if you like, whatever, tuberose or gardenias or, whatever kind of flowers that are nice just because you can sit and smell them. I think of weed like that. So I want usually to have it be something where when I have it, I really enjoy how it looks, and then I really enjoy how it smells. And I like the ones that are really special in that if you smelled them and you didn't know it was weed, you might not know that was a weed smell,
Yeah.
So that leads me a lot, but then it comes down to, on top of, okay, what is it in the bag? It's also, what is it in the garden? So is it fun to grow or is it a nightmare to grow? And so that's why I say experience has led me. It's like I look at a plant and I go, oh, this one's going to be a pain in the butt, or, ooh, this one's going to be a dream and I'm going to be happy just to go work with these plants every day. So if I have something and I say, oh, I like this one, you can bet that the plant is going to be fun to grow. It's going to be fun to look at. It's probably going to be fun to harvest. And it's also going to be fun to have it dried in your bag.
Yeah, right on. Your Black Lime Reserve was a home run by anybody's standards, and I'm grateful to have been able to sample it a few times. It's got that bright lime and coconut and fruit over like a bed of like soothing earth and moss. It plays both ends of the spectrum, and it's not like like when somebody says, can you taste the fruit, can you, and you're like, oh, maybe I can, whereas the lime, it's like boom, it's like a green popsicle out of the fridge that out of the freezer that point. What went into that, because since it's probably the strain that I would say nationally you're probably most associated with. You just gives us a little bit of background of the Black Lime.
Okay, so the deal with that was that release was a clone that I keep that I call Lime Number 1, and what it is it's a PK, the OG type, because there's a couple different kinds of PK, but the one I used was an OG type, and I crossed it with what I called Black Lime. And what Black Lime was I had these seeds, and I got them, I think 96 or 97. I got the 2 different kinds of seeds, and one of them I was working with my buddy, and he actually got one side of it, which was an old strain that was a lot of chemical smells, really deep, really heavy, a lot of skunkiness, really toxically stony, to the point where, like, if somebody's drinking alcohol, like, smoking that is a no-no. Like 4 beers and 2 hits of that, and you're probably going to be laying in the bushes throwing up. It was really, really strong, and we called it POG, for purple, orange, and green. I didn't come up with it; my buddy did, and it was old genetics that came from my family in the 80s and got recycled through a couple people and then came back to us. And it was kind of like just the regular stuff to me. And I didn't really hold it at a high value because none of it was pure anymore. It had become this old oil can strain crossed with which was a Oaxacan Afghani crossed with the Northern Lights. That was a clone we gave him for years, and this guy did this breeding, and then me and my buddy worked for him. He got some seeds. So there's that side of it, which is this really deep, heavy, nasty, gross thing, but it was amazing, but it was just crazy, and And then I worked for another friend of mine, and I was silk screening people's trim back then to make them hash, and I was pressing the hash, and people were like, whoa, this is like old school hash from back in the day, and this is like, I started doing this in like 94, 95. This guy from Lebanon showed us how to do it, how to press it, and we were like, oh, that's really neat. You can press it. Because of course, if you have really good hash, you can press anything, but he showed us how to press anything basically that could be pressed to make dark, sticky, nice hash, using heat and everything. And so I was doing that. And so I went through the guy's stuff. And as I'm going through, I go, hey, there's some seeds in these. Are these good, And he goes, yeah, I'll give you some other seeds, though. But if you want them, I mean, you can try them. He goes, but they're nothing I did on purpose. So who knows what they really are? They're just seeds in my shake.
It's like a rounding error for him.
Yeah. So I take the one and I take the other, and now the pog I know is good, so I grow it out. The other one, which at the time I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was like Afghani, and later on I found out there was Northern Lights in it. And then even more recently, only like last year, I was talking to the guy. I was talking to a friend who had been talking to the guy I got it from, and he goes, hey, did you know he had used the old Burmese in there from so-and-so? And I go, no, he never told me that. And he goes, yeah, he goes, we went further down the rabbit hole, we got down the wormhole or something like that. And he goes, then all of a sudden, this more info pops out, and he's got the Burmese in there, the old Branscombe Burmese. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that made a little bit of sense too, for there to be something else in it, because it was so exotic, this other thing. It was always like grapefruit or cranberry or lime or something, just always really nice, And so of course, the ones I knew were pretty good because the pog my buddy had bred a couple times, and he said, oh, these are all really good now. And so I did a seed patch garden, and what I did was I went, okay, well, here's the one that I know is great. I'm going to keep the males from these, and here's the one that came out of that shake. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those males because I don't know what's going to come out of this stuff, because the guy who gave it to me, he said he didn't know,
Yeah.
So he only grew one thing, but he was like, probably not my keeper plants. Those are probably the more wimpy ones because it's the purple.
Yeah, you got to focus somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get those and I grow them. And out of the ones that were the citrusy ones, I got a couple really nice, big, beautiful plants that were just what I would have wanted. But interestingly enough, the worst plant in the whole thing that was one of those ones that if you looked at all the plants and you go, okay, well, there's a dozen of them, let's get rid of the weakest one. That was the one that wound up smelling like Thai lime,
Wow.
And so
you're like, buck up, camper. You got some work to do. You need to bounce back.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, it was basically like, okay, well, and typically in breeding, the way I do things is this: if I get boys that are really, really, really weak, or there's something that I really don't like about them, I'll go ahead and kill males. But and this is for open pollinations, of course. I do selective line breeding too, where you only use one male. Yeah. But in this case, we were just trying to make a whole bunch of seed with this stuff and just kind of see what we get. So I wound up killing all the males from the citrusy stuff, and from the fuely stuff, I wound up keeping maybe 3 or 4 males. I don't remember. There was a bunch of them there, and I killed most of them. And so when I have females, even if the females look bad, I keep them just in case they have something really cool, because it's not going to water down the gene pool, because it's easy to keep the seeds from a female separate. But when you have a lot of males together, you can't keep them separate. Their pollen's all going to mix, right?
Right.
So whereas I cull a lot of the male population, I don't cull out much of the females unless there's something really bad about them, like maybe if they get like a stem rot or something that I just don't want to have nothing to do with even growing it one time. But if I'm willing to grow the plant one time and it's a female, it's going to stay. And so it was just this wimpy little plant. Its buds, when they were finished, were only about as big around as my thumb. None of them were long, and it had these tiny little leaves and these thin little stems, and it gets all the way, I think it was a Burmese throwback, judging by what was in everything. And it gets all the way to the end, and it gets this incredible smell. To this day, it's still my favorite smell, and it comes out of the lime, but there's not a ton of them in there because the lime was the cross of this weird plant that was there, and it was already kind of a sport. And then I had crossed it with something that was in a totally different world of flavor. So anyway, what ended up happening was I labeled all the plants. So I had like tall purple cranberry, tall green fat northern lights, and then this one plant, it smelled like lime and it turned black in the fall. So on the package of seeds, which was a bag of seeds that, it was a lot, it was a lot of seeds I made. It was a whole, imagine, it's a whole garden full of 6-foot plants and they're all fully seeded,
Yeah, that's a lot.
And so
that's a release right there.
Yeah, it was a lot of seeds. And so that's what it wound up getting labeled as the black, so that I would know which plant it was. Oh, this was the plant that smelled like lime, and it turned black. So that's where the name black lime came from. It wasn't like, ooh, what are people gonna really think is cool or whatever. It's like, no, it's just off of my label, which is how most of my names come about. I write them down for reference for myself, and then people ask what it is, and that's the only name for it, and then the name sticks.
Yeah.
So that was really where that came from. And then I wound up taking a male out of that population when I planted some of them, because the females came out really good. And I didn't really expect them to be that crazy, but they were amazing. They were like the best stuff I've ever seen. And then there started to be the OG craze. And so I went, well, let me take some of my different males and throw them on OGs and see if I get anything to come out OG, which I didn't, because all my stuff was so dominant over the OG. So I wound up with this, basically with a plant that did really good, but it wasn't OG. It still had all of the terpene profile from the middle ground of the black lime. So it has this really heavy chemical funk, earth, moss thing, like you said, and then it has all this really beautiful floral, limey, citrus zest stuff going on, and that's why it wound up being such an odd thing, because I took two things that were really different. You know what I mean? It was like peanut butter and bacon, or it was a weird thing to put together. So
right on, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that story, and that makes a lot of sense too, because the flower that I have, it's this kind of blackish, bluish, almost iridescent, and it's nice to hear the background behind it. Hey, we're going to go ahead and take our second short break and be right back. You're listening to Shaping Fire, and my guest today is Mean Gene, master cannabis breeder at Freeborn Selections. If you grow cannabis with sunshine, you can often feel limited by the seasonal cycle. You want to grow sustainably and save money, so you use as little electricity as possible. But if you haven't studied or implemented light deprivation techniques into your greenhouse, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. By incorporating light deprivation solutions into your greenhouse, you can often add 2 or 3 additional growing cycles to your year. When you pencil out the financial benefit of those additional cycles, you'll realize why commercial-scale light deprivation technology is remaking the cannabis industry. What used to be done by pulling tarps over hoop houses has been scaled up over the last few years in such a way that it's become mechanized, easy, and affordable to even small-scale commercial cannabis operations. Forever Flowering Greenhouses is the industry leader in light deprivation, greenhouse design, and operation for the commercial cannabis industry. Their team of greenhouse experts have been in the fields of Northern California for decades, and they're now building greenhouses for commercial cannabis companies across the country. If you are new to light dep and growing in greenhouses, I encourage you to go back to Shaping Fire episode 13 with guest Eric Branstad of Forever Flowering. I talk with Eric about the importance of intelligent greenhouse management, as well as the huge financial benefit of incorporating light dep techniques. There are so many aspects of utilizing a greenhouse that can go wrong. From temperature and airflow to light dep and workflow, Forever Flowering will help you produce crop after crop of well cared for flowers. They can help you retrofit your existing greenhouse with light depth and other modern systems at a level that fits your budget. If you're just starting out, Forever Flowering can help you plan and build your new greenhouse so that you get started on the right foot. The cannabis business has enough risks without trying to go it alone with your greenhouse. Contact Forever Flowering Greenhouses to partner with folks who have an indisputable reputation as knowledgeable and easy to work with. Go to shapingfire.com/FFG to find out more. Now that the health benefits of terpenes have become well known in the cannabis industry, people everywhere are looking for the purest terpenes without adulterants. The problem with most terpene providers is that they're not sourced naturally and instead are made as a byproduct of refining petroleum, and that's so sketchy. The terpenes sold by True Terpenes are entirely different. They are certified organic, non-GMO, and food grade. That means that they are extracted from real plant sources. There are no solvents of any kind. They are distilled only with steam. That's right, only steam. In fact, terpenes from True Terpenes are so pure that you can eat them. Not only that, but you can stack them with better results too. And what I mean is, other companies' terpenes have got a few % of impurities, and when you stack those terpenes to make your blend, you're adding a variety of impurities that degrade your final product. True Terpenes also have strain-specific terpenes for a wide range of cannabis strains like Durban Poison, Sunset Sherbet, and Granddaddy Purple. True Terpenes has robust and supportive customer service, so your questions will get answered fast and efficiently. If you shop for terps before, you know how rare that is. So whether you want to cup your hands to smell some beta-caryophyllene to calm down after getting too high, or if you want to dab some pinene so your lungs feel fabulous and your mind feels liberated, True Terpenes will provide you with a truly natural experience. If you are a cannabis product developer, these are the terps you want to add to your oil or edible or capsule or whatever. True Terpenes are simply the best your money can buy. Don't try and make a premium product with substandard terps. Choose True Terpenes for a top-shelf experience. Go to shapingfire.com/True Terpenes to find out more, or click on the link in this week's newsletter. Welcome back. You are listening to Shaping Fire, and I'm your host, Shango Los. And our guest this week is Mean Gene, master cannabis breeder at Freeborn Selections. So, Gene, I know that you've done some runs with Aficionado, and the Aficionado stuff is all, ultra premium elite and also in limited edition. And, that is an interesting aspect of it because it makes the seeds themselves more valuable, but it also keeps it out of the hands of a lot of people. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the limited nature of seeds. Are you attracted to the idea of a limited run so it's a little more rare? Or was that mostly just because that's the Aficionado premium model to release?
That's actually a concept. It's kind of a double-edged sword with doing stuff limited, but it's a concept that I was supportive of because I've noticed over the years that if things are a little bit harder to get, people tend to value them more highly and take them more seriously, which from a preservation point of view, because that's really, I'm really concerned with things staying around because I've seen so much stuff just be gone and you never see it again. So to me, I feel like if somebody gets a pack of seeds and they know that there was only ever a couple hundred of these packs released, or there was only 50 of them released, once they get it, they're more likely to breed it and keep those seeds around. And people are more likely to say, oh, I really wanted to get that. Whereas if everybody's already seen it at everybody else's house, they're more likely to go, yeah, I could get that anytime. I'll grow that later,
Yeah, I mean, certainly when I see people at at the Aficionado booth at Emerald Cup, people are treating these things like they are, gifts from the gods because, not only are they paying, serious money for them, but, really, if, that's all you're going to get. And so, you're popping each one with intention and you're taking care of it. And you just, I know when I have got rare seeds, I just shower them with more love and care than I do if somebody gives me, oh, here, this is my latest run. Here's 50 seeds of it,
Yeah, and I use the analogy of dogs, because I see a lot of things, a lot of parallels because breeding dogs, breeding seeds, I I always say, hey, like, and it's the same with seeds. With dogs, I say, hey, go adopt a dog. Go get a dog at a shelter. They're all good. It's the same as seeds. It's like, hey, go buy that $18 pack of seeds. Go try, plant those seeds that you found in the bud. Go plant those seeds that can't even, you know what I mean? Like, just try them all, and there's gonna be some stuff. But I know for a fact that if somebody goes and they go get a dog out of a cardboard box in front of a store, they're going to be less likely to focus on that dog as much as if somebody says, hey, here's a $12,000 puppy. Yeah. Somebody who buys a $12,000 puppy, you think they're going to miss their shots and let them get parvo, or they're not going to cut their toenails, or they're not going to check their dog's ears and teeth. And you know what I mean? Like I have dogs. I have one dog that's an expensive, highly bred, like show dog type pit bull. And I have a mutt that's a St. Bernard and blue pit bull mix. And I treat them the same. But I also treat crappy bag seeds that I find out of a bud that I think is a good bud. To me, finding that bag seed, that's just like somebody saying, hey, here is a pack of seeds. These are really expensive. They didn't make very many, So for me, I have like that understanding that it could be anywhere, but I know that there's a lot of people who don't think that way. So I do understand the value of telling somebody, look, these are very rare. There's not a lot. So that's like when the Black Lime Reserve was the first thing that I put out publicly with Aficionado. I was like, well, I had a lot of them. I could have put out a couple thousand packs, but I knew that if I put out 300 packs, that people would take them more seriously, and they would be more likely to clone ones. And when they get a keeper, they'd be more likely to make more seeds, and they'd be more likely to make crosses with the seeds, because I like it when people do that stuff with my seeds. I don't want to just put out a cross and have people go, oh yeah, that's cool, what's the next one? It's like like you said, people act like they're gifts from the gods, and like, depending on whether people believe in gods or a god or just the universal force or the spirit or whatever people believe we're getting our life from, those seeds are a gift from that force. Like that's a major thing, that like every type of life form that there is special, but these ones that help us as much as cannabis, I mean, there's nothing that's really as helpful potentially to us as cannabis can be. I mean, you got something here that can potentially, if you find the right plant, it could cure any disease. It might just be a matter of finding, oh, okay, well, look, this one produces this chemical. And, once you get it down to everybody only going, oh, yeah, we just all grow OG, or, oh, we just only grow sour, we just only grow cookies, that's fine. But it gets to a point where you go, well, but what about all of this, these plants, they don't all grow by themselves. We've adopted them into our cultures, and then we keep them. And then that means that if all of a sudden we lose them, it's like we've adopted them and then we've abandoned them, So we become responsible for the gene pool because we've done these things to it, and we've created all this really crazy diversity. And then after a while, then we go, oh, no. And it just all gets, it all gets left by the wayside. And so, there's an aspect of things being sought after. And so at this point now, when I feel like, okay, people understand that if I have a breed and I say that it's really valuable and it's really special and it's worth growing, people now, more so than when I first released stuff, people will believe me. So I feel like now I can put out a lot of seeds and I can put out a lot of different strains, and people will understand where I'm coming from in breeding, that these things are special. So I don't necessarily have to say, okay, well, this is so special like this and so special because of that. I can just say, look, this is really good. This is worth having. Please, if you buy them, make more, give them to your friends, take clones, keep it around, because it's part of what's going on, So that's why I say it's like a double-edged sword, where you go, okay, well, it's good to have it be limited, but at the same time, you're going to miss some of these people who are out there who are preservationists, who are hoping that they could get a pack, and those guys didn't get a pack, and some guys who just grew them out real quick and sold the weed without ever even smelling it because they heard it was a hot item. Those guys got some of the packs too. So I want to be able to put them out so that both those, I want to be the guys who want to get the seeds and they just want to, hey, I just want to grow a bunch of weed and I'm going to make money and I'm going to look cool and this and that. Great. Get these cool strains. But I want them to be able to also reach as many of the preservationists as they can so that people get their hands on them, and in 50 years or 100 years or 1,000 years from now there's somebody who's got these things and they go, hey, I don't know where these came from, but they're really cool and they're valuable. Let's keep making more. And that's like a service to the plant, because the plant is they're like, for me personally, there's nothing in life that's ever done as much for me as a cannabis plant has,
Yeah, well, amen to that. And I'm glad to hear that you like the idea that people are making crosses with your gear in order to preserve it in their region. The seed pack that I know that came up here near me, my buddy planned the 4 crosses well in advance, so he had it all lined up. And, and so we got to try, the original black lime as you intended, but then also, 4 crosses. And, the black lime is still in there. You can still taste it, but, you could also get the variations. And so there's a lot of joy in that. And so, let's wrap up with this. There's a lot of folks who are listening today who aspire to be an elite breeder like you are, and a lot of folks, they're getting their start by just they've got two strains that they like, and then they cross them, and they've got F1s, and they share them with their friends, and they feel good about that, and so they pick up a breeding book and they get a little more serious. But you've done it all now at this point. So what advice do you have for folks willing to put in the work, who want to follow on this path behind you? What advice would you give them that can kind of help them along their way?
My biggest advice would be, go with what you really like. A lot of people, as like a commercial breeder, I was talking to somebody and they were saying, "Oh, I just take males and put them on these clones and like kind of, oh yeah, like that's nothing." And I was like, "Well, if you're gonna make stuff for other people, what I said, I think is if you want to please the crowd, you got to play the hits, right?"
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing to do, but if you are doing that, you really want to go with what you really like. So the things that really that you really vibe with, like, all right, this is something that I really like. Like, I have a buddy who he's like, I've seen all the weed, I've seen all the kush, I've seen everything. He goes, I like Granddaddy Perp or Urkel. Those are still the thing that I like. I like perps. I'm not into this kush. I'm not into this diesel. He's just like perp, perp, perp. I'm like, if you're the guy who likes the perp, then that's your thing. If that's your very favorite thing, then be the guy who makes the perp crosses, who makes the strains that are based on perp and that have those things that you really like, and then really, really tune into that. Really tune into what you're vibing with, because those good feelings that you're getting about something, those are what are really telling you that that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's how our intuition works, and that's how our brain and our everything is our whole energy is really wired to that. Like, okay, if you want to breed the thing that you really like. Now, you might, if you want to do it like commercially, you might have to think about, okay, well, where is the place that there's the overlap between these two groups of traits here? Okay, everybody else wants it to be stony. They want to get good concentrate production. They want a plant that's easy to grow. They want a plant that's high yielding. They want disease resistance. Okay, Now, so everybody wants those things. So then now with the things that you really love, which might be like in my case, I love stuff that's floral. I love stuff that's spicy. I love stuff that's earthy. I love the smells that to me are like classy. Like to me, like loud is cool, but it doesn't have to be loud for me. It needs to be special. So that's like my little thing that I got going. So it's got to be whatever you are really, really into. You got to tune into that and make that be what you're working towards, because that's the only way you can really do something well, is to be able to really be turned on by it. Like, all right, this is the thing that I like, so this is what I know about. Like if you're going to be, if you like heavy metal, don't play jazz. You know what I mean? If you like tacos, don't make pizza. Do whatever it is, that thing that you really, really like, tune into that and do that to the max. And then that's when you're going to wind up having these things that are really cool,
Yeah, totally. Following your passion, and you'll never be bored in the cannabis field. That's for sure. So, Gene, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know your time is valuable, especially this time of year when you're especially busy. But thank you for being here and sharing what you got.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, dude. And, I'm glad to be able to get a little bit. Hopefully, somebody can get a little tidbit of info here or there, a little bit of inspiration or direction or whatever, and, make some good seeds, or just, find some good seeds and grow some good weed, or whatever people are doing with it.
I think that there's some amazing insights in your story and a lot of inspiration too. So I'm sure people are going to dig it. You can find out more about Mean Gene and Freeborn Selections by following his Instagram at Mean Gene from Mendocino. I also highly recommend that you check out the interview that Kevin Jodry from Wonderland Nursery did with Mean Gene as part of the Wonderland Nursery Seed Series. Shaping Fire was actually a sponsor of that down in Humboldt a couple months ago. You can check that out on the wonderlandnursery.com site. Of course, you can find out more about aficionado seeds at aficionado.com. And you can buy Aficionado and Freeborn Selections when they're available at seedsherenow.com. Or, come on down to the Emerald Cup in December and buy it direct at their booth. You can find more episodes of the Shaping Fire podcast and subscribe to the show at shapingfire.com and on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a positive review of the podcast wherever you download. Your review will help others find the show so they can enjoy it too. On the Shaping Fire website, you can also subscribe to the weekly newsletter for insights into the latest cannabis news and product reviews. On the Shaping Fire website, you will also find transcripts of today's podcast as well. For information on me and where I will be speaking, you can check out shangolos.com. Does your company want to reach our national audience of cannabis enthusiasts? Email hotspot@shapingfire.com to find out how. Thanks for listening to Shaping Fire. I've been your host, Shango Los.